Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 59 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what's going on?
Hey, man, how you doing?
Doing great. Christmas is behind us.
Yeah.
I had a great Christmas. How about you?
Yeah, I did. I had a pretty good Christmas till I got sick, but that's all right. I'll be all right.
You're powering through.
I'll tough it out.
That's the kind of man that you are.
Yeah, I'm a tough guy.
You got to power through.
Power through.
In 2016, California wife and mother Sherry Papini disappeared for 22 days. When she was found, she told authorities a detailed account of being kidnapped and tortured. Years later, in a stunning twist, Papini pled guilty to making false statements about what happened to her, setting off a media firestorm. Now, for the first time, Sherry Papini is telling her side of the story and revealing shocking new information. Sherry Papini, Caught in a Lie, an ID documentary event, Monday, May 26th at 9 on ID. Set your DVR. All right, let's start with some new Patreon supporters. We had Miranda Dupier, Lisa Lewis jumped out at her highest level, Haley Miller.
Hey, Haley.
Yep, big social media fan. Mercedes Michua Guerrero.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
I hope I did that one justice. I'm pretty sure not. I'm pretty sure I got that wrong. But
You're pretty good at messing up a few.
Vicky Ferris, Nicole Grant, Katrina Hockey, Cindy Davis jumped out at her highest level.
Cindy.
Lisa Moss, Adam Barber.
Hey, Adam.
Angela Mullins, JD.
I like that. JD.
A lot of mystery there behind a JD.
What if he has a big butt?
You wonder if he has a big butt?
No. Big belt buckle that just says JD.
JD.
Yeah.
And he carries around a stick.
I'd want a big belt buckle that just said JD. If I was JD.
Yeah. A lot of guys named JD you just don't want to mess with.
No.
And you know what? I'm assuming this is a guy. It could not be. It could just be a woman that wanted to.
If I was her, I'd want a big belt buckle that said
big
JD.
Belt buckle. We had Arian Batinger.
I think you maybe got that wrong, but okay.
Batinger. I don't know how hard that G is. Or I could have butchered the whole thing completely.
Probably did.
She sent me a message saying that she thought I probably would, but I think she wanted me to because she didn't tell me how to say it.
She's testing you.
Yeah, she just wanted to see how I would do. Bethany Abear, Kellyanne, Joe Esquinas jumped out at our highest level. And then we had Justin Waymeyer.
Yeah, I appreciate all those folks.
Yeah, I do too. All the new folks that made the choice to support us. It's Christmas time.
Yeah, tough time.
Not the easiest time of year to
extra cash is slim.
Right, to donate to a podcast. So yeah, big shout out to everybody. And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Key Sardi, and Key has been with us for a very long time.
Very long time.
Been supporting us at our highest level for all of that time. It's amazing.
That's truly amazing.
How much support that she's given us. So big shout out to Key.
Unless she's like, I just realized I forgot to cancel that.
And now we just reminded her.
Yeah. Keep it going.
Let's hope not. And then on PayPal, we had Catherine Quigley gave a very sizable donation.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
As did Michelle Herbert, who donates kind of off and on Paypal. She's been a huge supporter on PayPal.
Yeah.
And then we had Alex Howe donate through PayPal as well.
Wow. That's amazing.
So want to give a huge shout out to Maggie for her writing and research. And then got to talk about Unsolved, because I'm really excited about this episode that's dropped right now at the same time that this one has.
It has.
We're talking about Texas Mystery in the Mansion. I mean, it's got all kinds of names to it.
Murder in the Mansion.
Murder in the Mansion.
Yeah.
But there's a couple people that end up dead.
Yeah, that's why we're doing it.
That's tragic.
Absolutely.
There's a couple people that end up wounded, but it's who they point the finger at that is so shocking. I don't know if it's shocking, but we're talking about a guy here that, and this is in the 70s.
Yeah, late 70s.
Is worth what, Gibbs?
Over half of
$500 million. $500 million.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if it still holds true, but at the time, This was the richest guy, I think, to go on trial.
Yeah,
for this type of murder.
I don't remember how wealthy that DuPont guy was.
Oh, yeah, Foxcatcher Farms.
Foxcatcher Farms.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But obviously this was 40-some years ago.
That's a lot of money.
That was a lot of money.
It was good to be in the oil business then.
Yeah, how much would that be today?
Today?
People.
1.2.
1.2 billion.
Billion, yeah.
With a B.
That's right.
Billionaire. That's big time money.
Yeah.
So check it out. After you listen to this, make sure you jump over if you haven't already. Check out the Unsolved episode this week. It's really good. All right, Gibbs, that brings us to the subject of this week's episode. And we're doing something a little different than we've ever done before. We're actually telling 2 different stories in one episode.
It's a 2 for 1.
It's a 2 for 1, but they're themed. And both of these cases involve murders committed by known sex offenders at the time. And in the aftermath of these cases, in each instance, there's a law that gets passed that is going to, have something to do with the sex offender registry, with how they have to register, how the public is notified, those type of things. And these are famous cases, famous laws. One is, the first one we're going to talk about is Megan's Law. And then the second one we're going to talk about is Jessica's Law. And most people are familiar with that. But what we want to do is go and break down the actual case that led to those laws being passed. So we start out, we have to talk about a guy named Jesse Temendequaz. He's born April of 1961, and there's going to be a lot of information that would come out suggesting that Jesse had a very rough childhood. His mother was no saint. It was said by some people that she was an alcoholic, and I think she even admitted some of this as things progressed after the incident occurred. She was very promiscuous, and it was reported that she had 10 children, fathered by 7 different men.
That's a lot of baby daddies.
It is a lot of baby daddies. So I'm using the word promiscuous, which I think applies in this situation. But that wouldn't be the end of the world. I mean, there are people that end up having a lot of children, and sometimes by multiple fathers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The problem with Jesse's mother is that she was a terrible mother, to the point where she ended up surrendering 7 of the children to either adoption or foster care because she was deemed to be unfit.
Yeah, I think there's moms that can handle it and moms that can't. I mean, we've got a listener that has, I believe, 8 or 10, and she does a fantastic job. And then there's people out there that can barely handle 1.
That depends on a lot of factors. But you're not doing a good job when you get 7 out of 10 kids taken away. You're doing something wrong.
Yeah, that's not good.
To be brought to some agency's attention where they're going to come out and take your kids away. Now, his father was a career criminal by the name of Charles Hall. Now, Hall, Temendequaz, right? How do we get there? It's been reported over the years that Charles Hall one day just decided to take the last name Temendequaz after seeing it on a tombstone. He saw the name, he liked it, and he said, you know what? I'm changing my name to Temendequaz.
So let's go from writing 4 letters to
Hall.
Yeah. Wow.
To spelling that out, yeah.
Well, it's different. You don't hear it.
No, it is different.
I've never heard of it.
Maybe he thought Hall was just so common.
Well, it is a pretty common name.
That he wanted to stand out. But he was a criminal too, so I don't know how much that had to do with it.
It might have a little bit to do with it.
Jesse's dad was a pretty bad guy too, because and there is some debate about his childhood and how much of this stuff happened. Some of it, I believe, has come out from his younger brother, but what's been alleged is that the father sodomized Jesse and his younger brother regularly, on a very regular basis, and that at one point in time, both boys witnessed their father rape a 7-year-old girl.
I don't even know what to say.
Now, if that happened, like I said, there has been some debate about how much of this is true, how much abuse actually occurred in the home. If any of that is true, that is going to jack somebody up. It is also said that the dad tortured, killed their pets, and at one time even made them eat one of their pet rabbits.
Really?
So it's not bad enough that you tortured pets, you killed this little rabbit that, these guys loved probably.
Cooked them up and made them eat it.
And then you made them eat it. Now, again, I'm not trying to sow seeds of sympathy for Jesse Temendequaz because this guy is going to do some heinous stuff. And it's not very long. I mean, he gets a criminal history when he pleads guilty to the attempted aggravated sexual assault of a 5-year-old girl. Again, speechless.
Yeah, I don't even know how.
It's really hard to even respond.
Yeah.
This was a crime that happened in Piscataway, New Jersey. He was 18 years old at this time. He was an adult, and he was riding his bicycle by 2 little girls who were playing outside. And apparently he was on his way home at the time. He rode up to the little girls, managed to convince them to go with him by saying that they were going to go look for some ducks. Apparently there was like a wooded area. There was a stream pretty close by. And he said, something to the effect of, I know there's some ducks down there. Do you want to see them? Something like that. So he leads these 2 little girls down an embankment. And one of the girls, she runs off. She must have sensed, Gibbs, that something's not right here. And she bolts, she takes off. But unfortunately, the other little girl is left there alone with this Jesse Temendequaz. And he would later say in a police statement that he knocked this little girl down and pulled down her pants. Now, he would tell police that he only wanted to look at this little girl. But this little girl would say something different. She would tell police that he smelled her private area.
Strange.
Very, very strange. Now, that other girl that had run away, and again, Gibbs, these girls are very young. So for this other girl to run off, get to a neighbor's house and say that something's wrong, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think so.
At that age. And this is what, lead police to get him. But he got what was essentially a slap on the wrist, right? This is a broken record that you and I talk about a lot.
Pisses me off.
An 18-year-old doing something that he shouldn't be doing to a 5-year-old. He's supposed to attend counseling. He never does that. That's another common theme that we talk about, seems like. So when it's all said and done, Gibbs, Jesse Temendequaz spends 9 months in an adult correctional center. Now, 9 months is nothing to sneeze at. 9 months of your life. But it doesn't seem like a lot to me for what was essentially, it was a violation of a 5-year-old girl.
But he didn't have the right to touch her.
Right. He did not have the right to do what he did.
Right.
We're talking, this is 1979. This is not today. And it's one of the reasons why we're talking about this, right? Today, I think this would be handled much, much differently.
Oh, especially today.
Yeah. And one of the reasons is because of these incidents like this that have led to these laws that we're going to talk about. And I think it's why it's so important. But he gets out of jail in 1981 and he moves into an apartment. And this apartment was located in a town called Dunellen, which it was said that this town was very close to where he had committed his crime. So he essentially did not stray very far from the area where he committed this first crime.
So that's kind of strange because back then, he did this crime, this act, but he just moved right into an apartment complex and nobody knew what he did. He could be living right next door to little Sally, and Sally's mom doesn't know what kind of potential monster lives next door.
And it's the whole reason why this case is important, because it leads to Megan's Law, which we're going to talk about. But playing on that, Gibbs, what you were talking about, just to paint a picture of where he's living, there's a wooded area about a quarter mile from this house, this apartment. There's a public pool, a tennis court. This is an area where a lot of children would play. Families, now granted, it's 1981. Families thought this was a nice, safe area, would allow their kids probably to be alone much more than they probably would today. But Jesse Temendaquaz approaches two more small girls. They were playing together in that area, and he asked them if they wanted some fireworks because the 4th of July was coming up. But he didn't happen upon these girls. You know, it would come out later that he had been waiting in this kind of, I don't know if it was a wooded area, but in this area for about an hour.
Stalking.
He was a predator. Yeah, right. He was stalking. He was waiting for kids to show up. Now, one of these girls, again, was scared off immediately. Maybe was Stranger Danger out by 81? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I think that was an 80s thing. I just don't know if it was out by 81. But this girl, she was scared and she ran off and she went to get her mom. In a very similar situation, there was the second girl left alone with this man. He was able to get her to walk with him for a little bit, but very quickly in this wooded area off this trail, pulled her to the side and started choking her. And what he would later say is that, you know, this girl turned blue from the choking and he thought she was dead. So he took off. He would also tell law enforcement that he was sexually aroused from this attack. But because that first girl had run off to get help, this girl's mom came pretty quickly and found her, still breathing, laying there in the woods, and she called the police. And they were there waiting on Jesse Temendaquaz when he walked out of the woods, and they arrested him. And he would tell the police that over the past year, since he had gotten out of jail, his sexual interest in young girls had grown to like increased. A fever pitch.
Rapidly increased.
Yeah, I mean, we know it was there before because he had committed this previous act, but now he has taken it to another level, and he's basically admitted to the police that he is sexually attracted to very young girls. He ended up pleading guilty to this assault and was given a 6-year sentence at a place called the Adult Diagnostic and Treatment Center. It sounds like a place where you would go to get counseling, get help, and I think it was offered to him, but he did not participate in any of the treatment program. They had some that were specifically designed for sexual offenders, and one of the therapists that was at this treatment center would later talk about Jesse, saying that the guy was a whiner. All he did was sit around and whine, and he spent most of his time sleeping. But it's while Jesse is at this treatment center that he meets 2 other sex offenders. And one of these men was named Brian Jenin, and Brian Jenin was in for the assault of an 11-year-old boy. And this guy, Gibbs, how he went about it was he joined the Big Brothers Big Sisters so he could be around young boys.
That's like being a scout troop master or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't want to paint any of these people, you know, with a broad brush, but you do hear a lot of stories around the scouts or these. Again, I'm not putting down the scouts. A lot of people were in the scouts, but
I was in the scouts, man.
Any situation where adults are unsupervised with kids, there is some danger there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people put a lot of trust in certain authority figures.
Right. You got 2 types of people, right? You have the majority of people that are doing it because they want to be with their kids are in the scouts, or they just want to help out youngsters. There's a lot of those people, and that's by far the majority. But you have, you know, some bad people that see that as an opportunity.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about it.
In churches and camps and
anything like that. You know, like I said, majority, great. They're doing it out of the goodness of their heart, and they want to help kids. But there is a small percentage of predators that see that as a perfect opportunity for them. Would you agree with that?
I would.
Well, this Brian Jenin sure did, because this is the idea that he had. He was obviously attracted to young boys, and he thought by joining the Big Brothers, he would get a little brother, right? That's how that works. You're supposed to be mentoring and guiding and helping that person.
I should mentor somebody.
You should.
Be the mentor.
You would be a great mentor. You could teach them calculation. How to say money, money conversion.
Money conversion, sure.
You could teach them all about movies.
Absolutely.
I mean,
school them up.
Their knowledge would be warped. They would know like maybe one person that was in it, half of the title.
Wonder who my target audience would be for mentoring.
Your target audience?
Yeah, maybe not. Don't answer that.
I'm trying to think.
Wonder if anybody out there wants me to mentor them.
One thing I do know is that you would be doing it for the right reasons. You'd be doing it out of the goodness of your heart.
Absolutely.
No doubt about that.
Yeah.
Now, how much somebody would learn from you, that is a whole different subject.
We gotta be like that.
I'm just saying, man.
Book of knowledge.
You have a lot to offer.
Book of knowledge.
It's not always 100% complete. That book has some missing pages.
I got a lot of volumes out there.
There are so many pages missing from that book. I don't know.
Got to get to the right volume to find out the rest.
How it would go down.
True Crime All the Time is sponsored by BetterHelp. You know, folks, therapy can feel like a big investment, but let's think about the state of your mind. It's just as important as your physical health. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, which adds up really fast. But with BetterHelp Online Therapy, you can save, on average, up to 50% per session. With BetterHelp, you pay a flat fee for weekly sessions, saving you big on cost and time. And you get quality care at a price that makes sense and can help you with anything from anxiety to everyday stress. Your mental health is worth it, and now it's within reach. I've used the BetterHelp service for years. And I love the fact that, I can connect with a therapist in a comfortable spot in my home on my laptop. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/TCAT today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/TCATT. Even the smallest step forward can make a big difference in your financial future. When you open a Chime checking account, you're one step closer to a better financial future with no maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Making progress has never been easier. I think we've all been in that position where we've had an overdraft. Well, with Chime, you can overdraft up to $200 with no fees. That's amazing. And they have over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. Make progress towards a better financial future with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/TCAT. That's chime.com/TCATT. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A., members FDIC. Spot me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs. MyPay eligibility requirements apply. Credit limits range from $20 to $500. $2 fee applies to get funds instantly. Crime checking account required. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details.
But this Brian Jenin used this situation with the Big Brothers, Big Sisters to molest young boys. Now, the other man that Jesse Temendaquaz met was a man by the name of Joseph Cifelli. And he was in for carnal abuse and sodomy of a 5-year-old girl that occurred in 1976. He pled guilty to 3 different counts, including impairing the morals of a minor. So Jesse Temendaquaz is in with some other there's a bunch of bad guys in this treatment center.
Yeah.
They're all sex offenders.
I mean, I understand the purpose behind the treatment center, but I don't know. It's allowing people to hear how other people do things that they like to do.
Well,
And that's
Tips.
that's what I got from this, right? They weren't involved in the treatment. I think they were just sitting around swapping nasty, sick stories, getting off on that type of thing. That's not a good situation at all.
No, because it's going to force somebody always to take it to another level.
Right, you're just fueling the fantasies or the frog demons that these guys already have. So Temendekwas gets released in 1988. He gets a job and he moves in with this Brian Jenin. Later on in 91, 92, they're living in San Diego. From there, he would move in with Joseph Cifelli. So he gets out of this treatment center and for the next few years lives with two guys he met there, two guys that did horrible things like he did. But Joseph Cifelli lived across the street from the girl that was going to be Jesse Temendekwas' next victim. And there were some people in that neighborhood that knew both of them were sex offenders. But there were a lot of people that did not. One of the individuals that had no knowledge that these two sex offenders were living right across the street from her was a woman by the name of Maureen Kanka. And Maureen is the mother of Megan Kanka. And at this point in time, Megan was 7 years old. She would later be described by a neighbor in an interview I saw, Gibbs, as an angel. I mean, people loved her. Everybody in this neighborhood, up and down, man, woman, child, they thought the world of Megan Kanka. You know, she loved the color pink. There was even a story that I read, Gibbs, where the postal worker who had that route to service the Kankas, that week, he remembered talking to Megan every single day.
No, that's impressive, man. I mean, she just must have been just such a friendly little girl.
Well, she was very friendly, but she was also waiting on a letter. She was waiting on a letter from one of her friends. And what is so sad about that story, and you can see the postal worker in this interview, I mean, he tears up talking about this because that letter, he would deliver that letter. But by the time it came and he delivered it, Megan Kanka she's going to be gone. And obviously we're gonna tell the story of that, but I just thought it was such an interesting fact. I mean, you've got a postal worker that was so touched by this little girl. I mean, I can't overstate it, Gibbs. Everybody in this neighborhood would come out, and everybody that knew her, they just thought she was amazing.
Yeah, sounds like it.
At around 5:30 p.m. on July 29th, 1994, Megan Kanka was lured to this house across the street where Temendekwas and Cifelli were living. And the ruse that Jesse used was that he had a puppy and he asked Megan if she wanted to come over and play with this puppy. But what he ended up doing to this poor little girl, he took her into his bedroom. He attempted to sexually assault her, but she screamed and she fought him very hard. And what Jesse would say later on was that he felt that he could not let Megan leave the house because if he did, his crime would be found out. We know Gibbs, he's already been convicted multiple times.
Yeah, several.
So he's at a point now where I believe that he feels like he would go away for a long time if what he has just tried to do is found out, which it's going to be if she runs out of the house and goes back to her family and tells them what happened.
Right.
And Jesse Temendekwas is going to make the decision that he can't have that happen. So as they're having this fight, he takes a belt and wraps it around her throat and strangles Megan until she's unconscious. And during the struggle, she ends up hitting her face on the dresser, bangs her head in the door, and she starts bleeding because of some injuries, right, that she sustained during this fighting. And Jesse doesn't want her to bleed all over the house. My assumption is he's worried about evidence or what else. I don't know what else it would be.
I think so. Evidence.
So what he does is he puts a plastic bag over her head. And once he has done that, he ends up raping this poor little girl. Now, Jesse would say that he thought Megan was dead, right? Suffocated from having this plastic bag over her head. So he ended up putting her body inside of a toy box. He carries this toy box out of the house and puts it in the back of his truck. But he would make a statement later on to police that at one point while he was doing this, he thought that he heard a noise from the box, almost like a cough. But he drives to a park, takes her body out of the toy box, and leaves her there in the middle of some really tall weeds. But before he leaves, he rapes her again.
Wow.
So
sick dude.
He's very sick. But I just go back to this. He thought she was dead. Then he heard a noise, which would make a reasonable person think, she's not dead. He doesn't have the balls to even do the right thing at that point, right? He's already gone down this bad path.
Yeah, he's done his damage.
He could have saved her life, but he wasn't about to. So he's violated her in unimaginable ways, left her to die, essentially. Now we go to Megan's family. They're unbelievably worried. They can't find their daughter. They don't understand why she had not come home. They end up calling the police, and a search ensues. You have the police, you have neighbors, and Jesse Temendaquaz was even part of the search. This son of a bitch, Gibbs, is handing out flyers with Megan's picture on them.
Acting all concerned?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inserting himself into the search and now I'm the good guy. I'm
here to help.
I'm
family.
here to help. This one's pissing me off, man.
It's kind of like that creepoid dude that you had.
Steve McDaniel?
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew what you were talking about. That's
too fresh in your head still?
No, it's the ESP that you and I have.
Oh, that's right.
I know what you're going to say before or in the first couple of words, a lot of times I know what it is you're saying.
Yeah. Why is that?
I don't know, because at other times you could go on for 3 sentences and I still have no clue what the hell you're saying.
I thought you were going to say, because I'm a good communicator.
And sometimes after a couple of words, I get it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But this guy does. He's pissing me off. He's chapping my ass, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, yeah.
And Jesse would tell the police that he had seen Megan riding her bike around 2:30 p.m., but his story's going to come into question as police are talking to Megan's mother, Maureen, because her events differ. And, some of her timeline and what she says would make it virtually impossible for him to have seen her at 2:30. So they go back to him with this information, and lo and behold, he now says that he saw her, Megan, riding her bike in front of his house between 5:30 and 6. They're not believing a word he says, right? He's changing his story. I think they're on to him pretty quick here. And what the police do is they actually ask Joseph Cifelli for permission to search the home, and he agrees. And Jesse's inside the house with police as they're searching. They're questioning him, and police would say that he was sweating, he was shaking, but he was sticking with this 5:30 to 6 time frame, and now he's saying that he saw her while he was washing his boat. How the hell does this guy have a boat, Gibbs?
Yeah, what's that about, man?
I mean, he was he was mowing grass or something. He couldn't.
Maybe it's just like a little John boat.
Well, maybe. It probably was, but still. This guy should not have a boat. This guy shouldn't have shit, is what I'm saying. I don't like this guy if you're not cluing into my...
Not picking up on that?
If you're not picking up on what I'm laying down here. And they even take him to the police station and interview him there. And again, his story's changing. It's not matching up with some of the facts that they already know, but they have to let him go. They really don't have enough to hold him, to keep him in custody. But it's just the very next day that Jesse Temendaquaz goes back to the police station and confesses, telling police that Megan was dead and that he had left her body in a park in those weeds. And the reason why he did this is because he was basically made to. by Joseph Cifelli.
Probably because Joseph was worried.
He didn't want to be wrapped up into it.
Yeah, you go clean or I'm going to tell.
Because he had a record himself, right? He didn't want to be involved in any way in something that he apparently didn't do involving a child.
I mean, once you go to the big house, man, you don't want to go back.
For various reasons.
Yeah.
Something that we don't need to go into. But people know what we're talking about. They know what you're talking about. Everybody knows what you're talking about.
I don't talk about it.
You shouldn't. It's something you don't talk about in public. But he does. He walks right in. He basically confesses to this murder. He leads police to the body of Megan Kanka. But when he gives his formal statement, his formal confession about the murder, he doesn't talk about any of the details of the rape, the multiple rapes that he committed against this girl. But when the autopsy is done, police show him the results, and he had no choice but to admit that he had violently raped this girl more than once. And they could tell from the autopsy what had happened to her. And they had a lot of evidence against him. You know, they had blood stains, hair, fiber samples. There was a bite mark on his hand that matched Megan's teeth. I mean, she had fought so hard, she'd bitten him.
Good for her.
Damn right, good for her. I mean, ultimately, it didn't save her, but you know, she fought.
She went out. Yeah, she went out
like
hard.
hell. So in the end, Jesse Temendaquaz is found guilty of kidnapping, 4 counts of aggravated sexual assault, and felony murder. He was sentenced to death, and even when he tried to appeal, his sentence was upheld, which is not surprising. They had a lot of evidence. They had his confession. You know, he's just appealing to appeal, I guess.
It's just something you do.
This is something you do. He had a lot of time on his hands at this point. He was on death row up until 2007. And that's when New Jersey abolished the death penalty. So his death sentence got commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole. All right. So that's enough about that stupid son of a bitch. We had to tell the story, but I really got pissed off during that one.
You did.
I mean, it's a horrible story, but you have to tell it because it leads into, what comes after.
Right.
And it's after Megan's murder that her parents, Maureen and Richard Kanka, they gathered, Gibbs, more than 400,000 signatures.
That's amazing.
That is a lot of signatures. 400,000 people. And these were people that they wanted to demand the right to be made aware of sexual predators living around them. And this part I found absolutely amazing, that within a few months of Megan's murder, New Jersey signed into law Megan's Law. And this was the first state law that mandated active community notification of registered sex offenders. And that's why this law is so important, right? It's why we wanted to talk about it. It's why we had to tell this horrific case, because the details around Jesse Temendaquaz and what he had done before, and the fact that, he was living in these communities and nobody knew that he had committed these horrible crimes against children. I mean, the victim's own mother lived across the street and had no idea.
Yes. Yeah. I can't even.
That 2 violent sexual offenders lived right across the street from her. And obviously, if she would have known, it would have changed everything. You're not going to let your 7-year-old child bike around the neighborhood if you know you have that type of person within eyesight.
Absolutely. You're going to
way.
Yeah. You're going to pay greater attention to what's going on.
Now, I have a clip of Megan's parents talking about her, and I want to play that.
She was a phenomenal kid. She was a happy little girl. She was a helpful little girl. She was a wonderful little girl. I wanted to be dead for a couple years and wanted to die, and
so that's what I try to tell her. You can't sit idle, which she's been doing.
It's been bad for months. I was fixated on that room. And at one point, I finally talked to the detective that was in charge of the case, and I asked him, I said, can I go in the house? I need to go in the house. And he made arrangements for me to go in before they tore it down. And when I went up in that room, it was just like she described, exactly like she described. And I told him, I said, that's where she was lying, right on the floor. And I would watch him leave for work. And as soon as he walked out the door, he'd look over at the house. Kids would leave for school, look over at the house. About living here. And it was always there. And then when they knocked the house down, it was so that we wouldn't have to look at that house anymore. It was still there. I used to be able to go, I don't even go in the park anymore.
And you can hear Gibbs in that clip, the emotion. And that clip's 20 years after all this happened. It just doesn't go away.
No, I don't think it could ever go away.
It can't. But imagine having to leave your house every day and look over at the house where your baby girl was murdered. I mean, you can hear her talk about that, and what I guess relief is the right word, it was when they finally demolished that house. Now, one of the interesting things about Megan's Law is that it's very much intertwined with other laws that were made after some of these other very high-profile cases. I mean, we're talking about Adam Walsh, Jacob Wetterling, Polly Klaas. I mean, these are all names that people know of kids that were, victimized and had some version, some law that was created after the crime that was committed against them happened. We talk about Megan's Law. That was a state law, right? Just New Jersey. Eventually, there was a federal version of Megan's Law that followed. At the federal level, this law required anyone convicted of a sex crime to notify the local authorities anytime they changed their address or their employment once they had been released, right, from prison, mental health facility, whatever it was. But I really want to make the distinction here between the New Jersey state law that mandated community notification, right? So it actually said that the community had to be notified when a sex offender moved in or moved into a radius or whatever it was. Whereas this federal version of Megan's Law basically just said that states were required to put the information out there, but it was up to the individual person to go searching for it to find it. Because I think that's an important distinction to make, because what the federal law did is it basically gave the states their own discretion to establish criteria for their state for how they were going to disclose the information. So what you ended up having was different states having very different criteria around disclosure versus active notification. And again, some of this has changed over time. I think a lot of the states have gone to more of an active notification.
I mean, you got a website that you pull up.
I do, but that's still not active notification.
No.
Right? I have to seek that out. I don't know here in Ohio. I really don't know what the law is, Gibbs, but I've never had somebody come to my door and say, hey, I'm an active, I'm a registered sex offender, and I'm required by law to notify you.
Yeah, moving in next door to your girls. I don't see that going well at all.
I don't see that going well, but I'm not sure. I don't know that we have that, because I've never had it happen to me, and nobody I know has ever said.
I've never had anybody knock on my door either.
And you would, because
The type of neighborhoods I live in.
yeah. But at a minimum, and you mentioned it, Gibbs, right? There are websites that I can go out to, that people can go out to, search, do within a radius and see. I know the one that I go to, you can pull up their picture, you can see what they were, in for.
Yeah, tier 1, tier 2.
Yeah, it's pretty descriptive. So that is a good thing. I like to know if somebody's living right next door to me or the closest person is 2 miles away. Still not happy about it either way, but it makes a big difference.
Oh, absolutely.
Across the street next door versus...
Yeah, Dad, I'm going to go spend the night at so-and-so's house, and
right.
you can pull up that address and see what's living around there, or maybe so-and-so's parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, never know. It's a weird name, though, so-and-so.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about that person anyway.
Yeah.
There was an assemblyman who came out afterwards and said, quote, Megan Kanka would be alive today if some of these bills regarding sex offenders had already been in place. And that's very possible. It's not certain.
No.
But it's very possible that her mother would have known who was living across the street, would have taken more precaution because she had that information.
Anything to give the sweet, innocent kids an advantage, you should.
Her family would go on to found the Megan Nicole Kanka Foundation, and this was designed to prevent crimes against children. On the mission page of the foundation, it states the hope and dream of the foundation is that no other child anywhere will suffer the same fate of Megan Kanka. All right, so that's the first part, Gibbs. That's the story around how Megan's Law came to be.
Very well-known law.
Very well. And a lot of people will know about it. Maybe not every single detail of the crime and how all that transpired.
I would say most places, cities, when you buy a property, there's normally a Megan Law disclaimer too. Part of a real estate transaction, if you have to disclose to that person purchasing your property that someone's informed you.
Oh, if you have active notification.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not in a state with active notification, I would imagine you would have plausible deniability, even if you looked up on the websites and you knew.
Yeah.
Technically, nobody ever came to your house and said, "Hey."
Right.
So to me, that's the first part is great, but I think there are a lot of states that don't have the active notification part on the books.
I think there's some that don't.
All right, so I think it's a great time to take a break.
Yeah.
We got a new sponsor that I'm really excited about, Daily Harvest. Daily Harvest delivers perfectly proportioned frozen superfoods, Gibbs. Superfoods. Straight to your door. We're talking about smoothies, soups, breakfast bowls, sundaes.
All good stuff.
There's some good stuff, but this is healthier than your normal smoothie. But it's good.
Yeah.
You and I have both tried it. It's very good.
Absolutely.
Daily Harvest focuses on healthy eating made easy.
And it's really easy.
It doesn't get any easier than this.
That cup and everything.
It's already in a cup.
Yeah.
You take it out of the freezer. I mean, it's really a no-brainer. It's stress-free, especially when it comes to trying to get more fruits and vegetables in your diet. It's very convenient. Delivery and prep, super easy, very straightforward. You actually store your Daily Harvest cups in the freezer until you're ready to make one. So it's not like some of these other ones where you have to make it within 3 or 4 days or something's going to go bad.
Oh, yeah.
These last quite a long time.
They do. They last.
You talked about how easy it was. All you have to do is add liquid. And that could be water, coconut milk, almond milk if you're feeling a little fancy like Gibbs. You blend it up.
The almond milk, man.
Or you heat it, depending on what you're making. Soups or smoothies.
Soup or the smoothies, yeah.
Smoothies take about 30 seconds, soups 5 minutes, and things like overnight oats and chia parfaits, you can just take it out and it will be ready like when you wake up. You just grab it.
Start eating
In the car. Well, I wouldn't do that. It's kind of dangerous. Take it to work. It's ready. Daily Harvest's produce is organic and unrefined, and it looks as good as it tastes. You can actually see all of the whole ingredients when you open the cup. Because keep in mind, you have to blend it. You can see the strawberries. You can see the cacao nibs. Cacao!
I'm not even going to try.
You can't say that?
Cacao!
Yeah, there you go.
Cacao!
Chunks of mango, whole raspberries, pumpkin seeds. Daily Harvest is the fastest, most convenient way to up your fruit and vegetable intake without having to put in the work that usually comes with eating fruits and vegetables. And for our listeners, all you have to do is go to daily-harvest.com and enter the promo code TCAT to get 3 items free in your first box. That's promo code TCAT for 3 free Daily Harvest cups at daily-harvest.com. And this actually goes great for me, Gibbs, in my 2018 New Year's resolution.
Absolutely. Get a fresh start, man.
Yeah. Eat better. Maybe start working out a little bit. We'll see how that part goes. Eating better is easier for me than working out. All right, Gibbs, now we have to talk about the events that led up to the creation of Jessica's Law. And this involves Jessica Lunsford, who was a 3rd grader at Homosassa Elementary School. And this was a little girl known to be very quiet, but she loved to play with her dog, Corky. She loved to sing karaoke. And again, like a lot of these girls that we talk about, or kids in general, people loved to be around her. She was a good kid. Now, she was at church with her father on the night of February 24th, 2005. And then they came home, and she gave her dad his usual goodnight hug before she went to bed. This is something that, apparently she did every night. When her family woke up the next morning, they found out Jessica was not asleep in her bed. So her father and her grandparents, they start a frantic search for Jessica. But it would turn out that she wasn't very far away from her house or her family at all. Jessica Lunsford was hidden away in a closet just across the street. So it's different, but eerily similar to Megan's story in that this involves somebody right across the street. Police are contacted and they do a search for sex offenders in the area. And one of the things that they find is a man named John Cooey. And they realize that Cooey is not living at the place of residence that he had given to police, as he was required to do. He was living in his sister's 3-bedroom trailer, which was located just across the street from where Jessica lived with her dad and grandparents. So right away, he's a person of interest. Number one, he's a registered sex offender. And number two, he's not living where he says he's supposed to be living. He's living right across the street. So we're in Florida. So police are real interested in this John Cooey. And they start tailing him in Homosassa, Florida. And he leaves the state. He's heading to Georgia. And they trail him all the way to Savannah, Georgia. And it's because of this that police are able to take him into custody. Because since he was a convicted sex offender, he had broken the law by leaving Florida without telling the authorities that he was going to leave the state. And the reason why he was a convicted sex offender, he had served 5 years in prison for a 1991 conviction related to lewd and lascivious conduct. And in that case, he confessed to luring a young girl with the promise to play hide and go seek. And he ended up masturbating in front of her. He exposed himself to her and he kissed her. But again, that's 1991, Gibbs. He served 5 years in prison for that. And I'm not downplaying that, right? What he did was horrible. I'm just going back to the instance we just talked about with Jesse. And I feel like he should have done more time for the things that he did. The disparity and again, we're talking about different states, so you're going to have some disparity. It always kind of, I guess, just takes me aback. It shouldn't by now, but it still seems to.
Oh, it always does.
But John Cooey ends up confessing to the murder and rape of Jessica Lunsford. And what he would say in his confession is that on the night of February 25th, 2005, he came home from a party. He was high on crack. He was drunk. He'd been drinking both beer and whiskey. And he broke into Jessica's home around 3 a.m., went to her bedroom. He woke Jessica up, told her not to yell, and then led her out of the house. And she walked out holding her stuffed dolphin in her arms. He led her across the street, took her up to his bedroom where he was staying, at his sister's house, but he didn't go through the front door. He took her up on a ladder. And then in his statement, he says he took her clothes off, he fondled her, and then proceeded to rape her. Now, what Cooey would say was that he was going to let her go free when he was done, but he got scared. And I think, Gibbs, this is somewhat similar to the case that we just talked about. And I'm assuming, and I always get in trouble when I assume, but that assumption is that he had designs of letting her go, but thought if he did, the authorities were going to be knocking on his door. That realization had to have come to him at some point.
Yeah, and he got nervous and scared and thought, I'll just keep her.
And then that's what he did.
Yeah.
Right? He kept her hidden inside of a closet for the next few days.
Yeah. Fed her eggs and grits and hamburger.
Maybe just buying time, trying to figure out what he was going to do. I don't know. I'm not in his head.
Well, the longer he keeps her, the worse off for him it would have been. So,
but I struggle imagining what this girl went through. to be violated the way that she was, to be kept in, the closet. And Cooey would say that she would just sit in the closet and sing to herself. Maybe that's the only way she was, coping with this, getting through this. Now, this comes from John Cooey, right? We got to keep that in mind. Because you got to think, Gibbs, there's other people living inside this house.
Yeah, so they either knew or they didn't know.
Is that the deduction that you're making?
That's my deduction. They either knew
Columbo?
or...
No, I get what you're saying. They either knew and didn't do anything about it, or they were... Somehow he was able to keep the whole thing hidden. But that's where the question of comes in. Was she really in the closet? Did he really keep her in the closet for that period of time? But he would tell the police that Jessica knew that her family was trying to find her. And at one point, he even let her look out of the window where she could see, the police across the street. And again, how horrible for her. It's unimaginable. But Cooey would say that she never tried to escape, that she did sit in the closet quietly singing. And he would even say that he never let her out of the closet, even to use the bathroom. And again, horrible to think about.
Oh,
She would have had to, go to the bathroom on herself. But Cooey would confess to raping Jessica again. And then several nights into this ordeal, he removed her from the closet, tied her up with a speaker cord, wrapped her in garbage bags, took her out of the house, and Gibbs, he buried her alive.
I mean...
Again, words, right? You don't even know what to say because...
He didn't even have the balls to not have her suffer anymore, right? He could have did something, which none of it was good.
No.
But he didn't have to bury her alive.
No matter which way he went, it wasn't going to be good. But to bury somebody alive...
Like, if you're going to do all that, why don't you go ahead and do,
That's got to be one of the worst ways to go, right?
Yeah.
Drowning, being buried alive.
I think burying alive would be terrible,
just
man.
running out of oxygen and knowing there's nothing you can do about it. You talk about balls. These guys don't have any balls. They're cowardly pieces of shit.
They are.
But then he would tell the cops that he buried the dolphin with her, saying, I quote, "I let her keep it. She wanted to take it with her." Like he was doing this great thing by letting her keep this dolphin.
Yeah, I did her a big favor.
So I'm not all bad.
Right now someone's yelling at the podcast. They're feeling the frustration that you're feeling.
Yeah, I am frustrated.
I can think of a few people that we talk to on social media. They're just right now. They're ticked.
Because I already know the story, but in talking about it, I'm getting frustrated. Frustrated is not even the right word. I'm pissed. I'm fired up over this. Now, Cooey would say that at one point he poured bleach over his bed because he thought that would help clean it up. So they got this confession, right? Slam dunk. He's confessed to the crime and everything. But the confession gets thrown out because apparently Cooey had asked for legal aid, legal representation before he was interrogated, but he was not given that. So this confession was ruled inadmissible by a judge. The police would find Jessica's body on March 19th, 2005. So that's quite a bit, just under a month since she was abducted. And her body was actually under the front porch of his sister's trailer where he was living.
Yeah, buried in a hole that's only 2.5 by 2 feet. 2.5 by 2 feet. Such a small hole, man. Just puts it even... Think about it.
It's just, the whole thing is very strange. And again, we're not saying this is how you should do it, but you commit this heinous act and then you bury someone right on where you're living in this very, very shallow, small hole. Now, he covered the hole with leaves, but the whole thing is just kind of a mystery to me, Gibbs, as to why someone would think, first of all, that someone would think any of this is a good idea, but that part's already done, right?
Yeah.
He's committed the act. Why would he just do it right then, right there? I don't get that.
Yeah, I don't understand it either. And the autopsy on this one bugs me as well.
Well, because like we said, it was quite a bit of time before she was found. So there was quite a bit of decomposition. But what they could tell from this autopsy, and I think this is the part you're getting at, Gibbs, it's kind of chilling, was that they could tell that she had poked through the garbage bags.
Yeah, her little fingers, man.
2 of her fingers had poked through the garbage bags before she suffocated.
Trying to get air.
And the medical examiner would come out and state that her death probably would have happened in about 3 to 5 minutes. I'm assuming from the time she was completely covered.
And couldn't get any more air.
Couldn't get it, from lack of oxygen.
But until that point, she had to suffer. Well, she suffered since the time he took her.
She did, yeah. She suffered.
But she had to
time.
suffer in that, wrapped up like that before she couldn't even get any more air. And then she had to wait 3 to 5 minutes longer. That's just...
So they couldn't use this confession that they had obtained in the trial. But they had other evidence. Obviously they had recovered Jessica. And the court did allow some very incriminating statements that John Cooey had made to investigators and to a guard at the jail. So they couldn't use the actual confession, but apparently he had been blabbing to other people about what he had done as well, and that they could use.
Well, they're normally idiots, and they like to boast.
So when the trial started in March of 2007, it was said that there was some very, very graphic evidence that had to be introduced. One of these pieces of evidence was a photo that showed Jessica's hands, showed her wrist that had a thin bruise where her hands had been tied together. Other evidence included a bloodstained mattress, the black trash bag she was buried in. They had the shovels that were used to dig the grave. And they had her stuffed purple dolphin that, when they found her, was tucked between her arms and her chest. And that's just sad. And that image is very upsetting.
It certainly is.
I mean, it's upsetting to us. It was very upsetting to jurors because they had to see all these pictures. They had to hear in very graphic detail about all these horrible things that happened. And just to put it into perspective, where they found Jessica was about 150 yards from her home. So it's about a football field and a half.
Yeah. Can you just imagine?
Finding out later.
That's how close your kid was?
And you had no idea.
And I had no idea. Yeah.
And as the police are on the stand, right, they're giving this graphic testimony, talking about how hard it was finding her body, what state it was in when they found it. It was said that John Cooey was doodling on a piece of paper. And what it turned out to be was, or what it appeared to be anyway, was a person in a hole. And then another doodle was a person smiling with a knot tying their hands above their head. This is not a guy that is remorseful to be drawing that kind of stuff.
Kind of cocky, actually.
This is a sick MFer. So it took the jury about 4 hours to deliberate, and they found Cooey guilty of first-degree murder, burglary, sexual assault, and kidnapping. And it was said that he showed absolutely no reaction when the verdict was read.
And for the murder of Jessica Marie Lunsford, this court sentences you, John Evander Cooey, to death.
The state of Florida never got the chance to execute Cooey. He died Wednesday of natural causes at a hospital. A Department of Corrections spokeswoman says Cooey had been ill for some time. The 51-year-old was sentenced to death in 2007 for kidnapping 9-year-old Jessica Lunsford from her bedroom in 2005 and raping and murdering her. Cooey told investigators he kept Jessica in a closet in his mobile home for several days before burying her alive in a shallow grave in the yard outside of his trailer. Cooey lived nearby. Deputies made 4 visits to his trailer, but never asked to go inside. The third grader's body was found about 3 weeks after she disappeared in Cooey's yard, about 150 yards from her own home. Cooey was already a convicted sex offender when he committed the crime.
And I wanted to wait until we played that clip, Gibbs, to talk about it, but you hear it in the clip. The police visited the house a number of times, never asked to go inside. Now, they may have not been allowed to, unless they had a warrant, but they could have asked.
Could have asked. But if they didn't have probable cause, I don't know how they could have got in without him offering them to come in.
But like we said, it wasn't his house or his trailer or whatever it was. His sister and other family members not knowing anything was going on, if they did, which I assume was the case, they may have let police in. So I thought that was an interesting fact, but I wanted to wait until she said it. So John Cooey died in prison, and I know everybody's wiping a tear away.
Not.
But from this, Jessica's Law was passed in Florida in 2005, and this law was designed to protect potential victims and reduce a sexual offender's ability to reoffend. And some of the key provisions of this law was classifying lewd and lascivious molestation on a person under the age of 12 as a felony and giving it a mandatory minimum 25-year sentence in prison. Now, to go along with this, it's also lifetime electric monitoring of adults convicted of those crimes. Lifetime electronic monitoring.
Can you imagine? I hate it wearing that little thing, man, for different reasons.
I know, it's rough, isn't it?
It's rough.
But we just talked about it earlier in the episode, and we've talked about it on others, of how there's a lot of things that we feel like people do, and they get a slap on the wrist. They don't do a whole lot of time. We're talking about minimum here, 25 years.
Yeah, I like it, man.
For lewd and lascivious molestation. And we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk about in a minute, about there are some detractors of this law, people that have issues with it. And I think one of them is the definition of that.
Well, it's always going to be the problem is sometimes it will overstretch the purpose of the law.
Yeah, the law in and of itself is designed to do a good thing. Now, along with, I just want to throw this in there, Gibbs, because along with that electronic monitoring comes the fact that when they get out, if they get out, that person is on probation for the rest of their life. That's coupled with the electronic monitoring. So since Jessica's Law passed in the state of Florida, other states have introduced their own form of Jessica's Law. And there was an attempt at a federal version of Jessica's Law proposed in 2005. It was called the Jessica Lunsford Act, but it never passed Congress. So basically what you have is a bunch of different states having their own version of Florida's Jessica's Law. And this is where, I mentioned the detractors, and there are around some of these states' versions that have been passed over the years, because some of the states have enacted, very serious punishments. I mean, Florida had minimum 25 years. That is a long time.
That's yeah.
But along with that, some of the states have instituted what they've called like a zero tolerance policy. Now, on its face, all of that is good, right? I'm for all of that.
Yeah.
But I think you mentioned it. It's kind of in how you define some of these things, right? Lewd and lascivious. And so, there are some stories out there that are kind of frightening about, some drunk guy on his way home from the bar stops to take a leak in a park, and lo and behold, there's kids there.
Yeah. That's overstretching what the law was meant to do.
Well, I would say it is, if that's how it really happened. But in a zero tolerance environment,
right,
there is no, if that's considered lewd and lascivious and you're convicted of that, you're going away. And that's just one example that I read, but and I don't know how true that is, but it was interesting if that's the case, because you can see where maybe this law or laws in some of the states get applied in ways that maybe they weren't really designed for. Now, some of the other things that people talk about is that in instances involving family members, the law may lead to people not wanting to come forward if they know somebody's going to get 25 years or a life sentence, or, that's some of the stuff that was out there too. I don't know how accurate that is, but the issue I think I found the most interesting was there are some states where if a sex offender gets paroled, there are very strict limitations on where that person can live. And there should be. I'm not saying there shouldn't be.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, distance from schools,
right? Exactly.
and playgrounds. And
The problem that comes in is in some of these very congested areas that we have now. It was basically, there were states where people couldn't live in any town because there was nowhere you could live that wasn't within however many yards of a school,
Yeah.
or a playground or something. So you actually have people like living out in the woods because there is no other place they can legally live.
Right.
Now, if they did something heinous, I don't give a rat's ass. Live in the woods, I don't care. But if you were taking a leak and did 15 years and then have to come out and live in the woods, again,
Yeah.
it's all about how the actual thing went down, right? Was it really a crime? Was it an accident or a mistake?
Yeah, I remember some states that went pretty extreme with some drug laws too, which was a problem, right? It read one way, but they would enforce it that if you just had a little bit of cocaine or maybe even weed on you, you had to serve the maximum. It was like 20, 25 years.
It's in response to something, right? The drug epidemic. And you put something in place that you think is designed to be a good thing, right? We want to get these drugs off the street. We don't want our kids exposed to this drug trade.
Right.
But then you apply it to where, this 20-year-old kid's got, a little bag of weed and he's got to do 10, 15 years or whatever it is.
Right.
Or he's got just a little bit of coke. And I'm not saying coke's great or whatever, but
No, but I don't think you do hard time because you've got a
right. You're treating him like he's Pablo Escobar. And,
exactly.
Some big drug kingpin when he went out to party one weekend and got some coke.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I think it's a good analogy. The laws are designed to help. They're designed to protect people, but it always comes down to application.
Right.
And how you apply it. It's just the zero tolerance thing, I think, gets into an area where it can be sometimes misapplied or used too harshly.
Yeah. Yep.
It is a law named after a young former Gaston County resident who was kidnapped and raped in Florida. It's one that her father fought for, a law that gets tough on child predators.
People in Gaston County remember Jessica Lunsford because while she was murdered in Florida, she grew up, went to school here in Gaston County. So it meant a lot for her father and for the townspeople to have the governor come here and sign the bill that bears her name. Governor Mike Easley signed the new law that sets a minimum mandatory of 25 years behind bars for convicted child sexual offenders and forces them to wear GPS tracking devices when they are released.
The likelihood of curing a child predator is very, very slim. And it is important that we know where they are.
So that law passed in North Carolina, very similar, sounds like, to Florida. Right? Minimum 25, GPS tracking for life.
If used correctly, I love it, man.
Yeah. I mean, and used in the right circumstance where somebody victimizes a child, I have no problem with it. You know how I feel about crimes against children. I know how you feel about them, too.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't want anybody to take what we're saying the wrong way about what some of the detractors of the laws have said. All right, Gibbs. So, two heartbreaking cases that ultimately led to what you'd have to say is something positive.
Yeah, some good laws.
Laws designed to protect other children.
Yeah.
To allow parents to know what kind of people they're living around.
Yeah, I think they're really important. So
now they're two very different laws.
Yes, they are.
The one about the notification is one thing. Jessica's law and some of the versions in states really put some teeth behind sentencing for, these convicted child sex offenders. And in the future, you and I, in these cases, won't be saying, oh, how did that person get out within 6 months? Because
exactly,
they're going to do a minimum of 25 years in some of these states. We only got one voicemail, Gibbs.
We need more voicemails then.
I think it was, the holidays. People were busy.
Call that number on the website.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Gibby. This is Andrea calling from Indiana. I listen to you guys all the time. I am a huge fan. You have gotten me through many, many weeks of work. I work 10 to 12-hour days inspecting medical products at a company called Cook, and you make the days go by so quick, and y'all just keep it up and keep your own time ticking.
All right, Andrea, thank you so much for the voicemail. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. Tough episode. Always is when we're talking about children.
Yeah.
But I think it was an important episode, Gibbs, because of what transpired.
That's some good awareness.
You know, as a result of these tragic events. Now, the issue that I have, and I was thinking about this while I was researching the case, is I think what is sad is that it takes something like this, like some of these horrific murders, to make people think of what we should do.
Yeah.
You know, obviously it's reactive.
It is.
You'd love to see where we're being a little more proactive, but...
Yeah, but it also takes think of what these parents, what they went through, yet they still had the drive, determination to push this forward. And, there's nothing easy about getting any type of bill passed. And they kept with it and kept with it and, kept on knocking on people's doors. I mean, gosh, the first one, almost 500,000 signatures. Really? You know how hard that is? That's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. I mean, we didn't talk much about Jessica's dad just because, the episode was going a little long, but he did a lot of work too.
Yeah, I mean, it's all incredible. Can't stop, don't stop, keep going, moving forward, get what you want, and that's what they had to do.
And it kind of reminds me of the episode we did pretty early on, Gibbs, about Lauren Landavazo.
Yeah, and how they all worked hard.
Her family is fighting. I still talk to her mom, Bianca, every now and then. They're fighting very hard to pass something that would help somebody in the future. In that case, if you remember it, she was 13 years old, and the issue was around how old she was.
Right.
If she would have been, I think, 10, then the sentence could be longer. And it just, remember, you and I talked, it just didn't make any sense.
It didn't make any sense. On
10, 11, 12, 13.
Why the gap difference?
It's still, you're talking about a child.
Right.
If you murder a child,
Child's a child.
It shouldn't matter if they're 10 or they're 13.
Right.
That sentence should be very severe. Sorry, I got back on my rant there for a minute. All right, that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Shopify's point-of-sale system helps you sell at every stage of your business. Need a fast and secure way to take payments in person? We've got you covered. How about card readers you can rely on anywhere you sell?
Thanks. Have a good one.
Yep, that too. Want one place to manage all your online and in-person sales? That's kind of our thing. Wherever you sell, businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 a month trial at shopify.com/listen. Shopify.com/listen.